Ozonics Killerwinds podcast back again. Episode 53.
Big 5-3.
Hey, we've got an exciting day today.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome.
This is only our second in-studio guest.
Third.
Zip. Who was our
Zip, Jet.
Oh yeah, Jet. We had Jet on.
Yep.
Sorry, Jetty. Yep. So we had Zip on. For some reason I thought we had Zach Rin on, but we didn't. We had Zach Rin. We had him
remotely.
We had him remote.
Yep.
But today we got Andrew.
Yep.
We had a code name for Andrew in previous episodes that we called him Aaron.
Aaron,
yeah.
We don't want to give him away.
Thanks for coming, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. So Andrew is from Huxley, so just south of Ames. We actually met you at the Iowa Deer Classic.
Yeah.
Yep.
We think he may be the only fan of the podcast or the only listener, full-time listener, every episode listener that we have.
My mom and dad listen to every episode. So.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Shout out, Mom and Dad.
I'll tell you what, that's actually a funny story. If you hang around Nick long enough, and this must be a Wisconsin thing, because if you were going to talk about your mom and dad, are you born and raised in Iowa?
I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I'm originally from Whitewater, Wisconsin, so
there
Nick and
you
I
go.
have those ties.
Okay, so you answer me this as the Wisconsinites. I don't know if that's what you say.
Yeah. You can say Wisconsinites.
Wisconsiners?
Wisconsinite.
Wisconsinites?
Scotties.
Why can't you see? That's why it's so much cooler. Iowans. That just makes sense. Wisconsinites. That sounds weird. Anyway, when I say, if I was going to talk about my mom and dad, I would say, yeah, my mom and dad, right? Or, hey, my uncle Zip, right?
Yeah.
But when he talks about them, it's, yeah, met mom and dad today on the interstate, dropping off my tailgate. It's always as if they're my mom and dad too. Have you ever noticed that?
I have, so I say my mom and dad.
Okay.
But I have a friend in Iowa that says mom and dad. And
Oh,
every
really?
time he does it, it throws me off. So maybe it's just like,
Maybe it's an Iowa
it
thing,
could just
actually.
it could just be a Midwest thing, but it's mixed between
Every
every family, you know? I don't know.
single time I tell a story. Colt, you did it again.
Yeah.
You did it again.
Where were we just at the other day? You did it.
I don't know.
We
It
were
happens
eating at
every
McDonald's,
day.
I think. He's like, yeah, I talked to Dad this morning. He's gonna meet me at up by Albert Lee. When I get off work, I gotta drive up there. I'm like, did it again there. It's not my dad. He's your dad.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's just what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know why you do it.
I don't know either. And every single time you say you did it again, I have to think about it because it's just natural for me to
Yeah,
say
I'll tell you what though, like that's what's funny. Buddies that I have from Canada, they don't say so we say mom and dad. They say instead of mom, they say mum. A lot of times they say mum, like my mom,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of interesting.
Mama.
What were we talking about before that? Meeting you at the Iowa Deer Classic.
Yeah. Iowa Deer Classic.
Yep. So Andrew might be the only besides Nick's mom and dad that listens to the podcast.
Yeah. And my buddy Mikey. Shout out Mikey. And Cole. Shout out Cole.
Hey, I'm Cole.
The real Cole.
That's another thing that I've noticed when I go to restaurants now. I don't say, if they ask for a name for my order, I don't say Cole. I don't know why that's a hard name. Must be in like public place in the noise of everything. If I don't say my name, pronunciate it correctly. So I just say CT.
Yeah.
They seem like I can get that right. If I say Cole, they're like, Colt? What did you say? Or they go, Paul? And I'm like, did I sound like I said Paul? I'm like, I'm like, what? So I just say CT.
My wife always just says my name when they ask her for her name.
Oh, really?
Anytime we're like making a reservation or something for her together, she just says my name.
Oh, so I think the best part about this episode is so we asked Andrew to be on the podcast. We actually asked him at the Iowa Deer Classic.
Yep.
He came up and was talking and was like, hey, man, I listened to the podcast. We're like, that, we were pretty excited. And then we were just going to try to have you remotely. You're like, well, heck, man, I'll drive up.
Yeah.
So from Ames to here is like, well, from Huxley, probably what, hour and a half?
Hour and a half, yeah.
Yeah. I used to drive Ames to Clear Lake all the time, hour and 15. But yeah, so then we ended up having you in studio. So I really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here and talk hunting and everything. Ozonics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we didn't even really tell you what we wanted to talk about today, which I think is going to make it more fun. Because you said before we started, you probably would have like overanalyzed every response, which is probably good because I think it'd be better just to kind of get your off the cuff. So the idea behind the podcast today and what we're going to be talking about is just perspective of a newer hunter, right? Because when you walked up at the Iowa Deer Classic, that was one of the things that you really kind of wanted to talk about. You're like, yeah, man, like I'm just getting into this. like, how do you decide, what to buy? How do you decide what to use or where to go or how to do it? There's just so much stuff out there. And I thought that was really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And so I think today we just want to kind of go through some of that stuff.
Sure.
As a newer hunter, what you are doing, how you decided. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because again, I think that's my biggest problem. One of my big problems is that I'm so close to it. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you get so deep in the weeds, you don't see the trees type thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes as a guy, and again, I'm not Daniel Boone or anything, but I've been hunting since I was a kid, and I'm definitely not a kid anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I've been hunting long enough that I feel like I kind of have an idea of how I do it, but sometimes you can be the old dog, that can't learn new tricks.
Yeah.
For sure. And there's just so much information. Like you said, there's so much information out there on everything.
Yeah.
And it's like every decision, it's like you could get 5 different opinions and you really don't know which way to go. And that, I think for me, that's been one of the challenges is like, starting with your bow, your like to use Onyx, to use Hunt Stand. There's all these different pieces of technology. And then every step of the way, there's so many different choices. So I think that's been one of the biggest, not challenges, but I feel like it's great that there's so much information out there and there's people willing to share.
Yeah.
But I think you almost have to just like go do it. You have to experience it and just try and see. But because there's so many choices, like just trying it and like making a decision on like what pair of boots to buy, what camo to buy, all of those things, there's so much information to just kind of get through to figure out like, do I buy the most expensive thing? Do I go for a bargain? If the bargain doesn't, suit you well because it's cheaper and it falls apart, then you're back at square one. Like there's just all those things that I'm thinking about constantly trying to figure out. Like this will be my first season bow hunting.
Okay.
And so just kind of
You picked the bow already.
I picked the bow. I got the hat. I got the hat with.
If you're shooting Matthews and right away now, we got something else we need to talk about as a new hunter. You can always tell a guy that has a new Matthews bow because Matthews sends a hat in the box that's a real specific hat.
Yeah.
At all the consumer shows, the guys walk up like, "Hey man, congrats on the bow," and they're like, looking at me like, "What?" I'm like, "The hat," Oh, I'll tell you what though, that is one of the things that, to your point, I think one of the things that I do with you a lot, and I do this for myself, just kind of like as a consumer, right? For example, like right now, I'm remodeling a house. I don't know how to remodel a house. Or renovating a house, I guess you could say. And, at first you can do a lot with a pry bar and a hammer. You can get pretty far. You're like, man, I'm making some headway. You know what I mean? Like, my elbow hurts, but this is working out great. You know what I mean? And then you actually start putting it back together and you're like, dang, I only have a skill saw like this. Definitely not enough. Like, I'm going to cut my finger off. Like, I need a chop saw or I need a table saw or I need I need power tools. And it's like, so as I've tried to kind of learn about that stuff, I kind of feel like I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I feel like what I do is I always think about, like, I always put things into the categories of good, better, best.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person, or my buying tactics, or, I don't know what you want to call it. My wife doesn't like the way I buy things, but I usually always try to get above good. You know what I mean? Because I know if I buy good, I'm going to end up having to buy it again.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, I don't usually like to try it right off the bat, go all the way to best, but I like try to get into the better.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Like I bought a really fancy laser level, right? This has nothing to do with hunting, but I was in the market for a laser level.
Yeah.
Okay. So I looked at the good, better, best. I definitely didn't think that the good was what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then I started looking at better. Well, then there's just such a huge features, advantages, benefit between better and best. So then I just bit the bullet and bought the best.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm right there with you, dude. Like, and again, experience comes with trial and error.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the bigger things too is there's a bunch of stuff that you can buy and look at and stuff, but at the end of the day, it really does all come down to personal preference. Yeah. And so I guess that would be kind of a question I have for you, Andrew, is like, as you've been going through this and looking at stuff to buy, is there anything that, like, say you go on YouTube or something to look up a review, is there any sorts of videos or kinds of people that you kind of gravitate towards that you might trust more than somebody else? Because, like for example, it's like you go on and
this is a really long question, by the way. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. No, but so what you're trying to ask is like, how do you decide what you listen to?
Yeah.
How do you decide what you watch?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I start a lot of times I'll just start with whoever makes the product because they typically have a review so that you kind of understand like baseline what it is. And then I'll just search like top or best. And then there's a lot of like, here's 5 saddle companies or here's 5 like bow companies or arrows or like broadheads. Like there's those like kind of like best of lists. And then I kind of go through there. And then I found that a lot of them do have kind of like this entry level price point, mid price point, and then like if you want the best of the best, and so that kind of does give you some options. And then from there, man, you can go down a rabbit hole real quick where you watch one video of one brand and then you just kind of keep going, and then it's almost like there's so much information out there that it just kind of paralyzes you sometimes where you're like, yeah, there's a number of things I still haven't made a decision on yet. Like, what broadheads do I shoot?
Right.
Like, do I shoot mechanical? Do I shoot fixed? Do I need a heavy arrow? Do I need to like? There's all these different debates, and depending on who you talk to or where you're getting your information from, you get you just get completely opposite. And I think I just need to buy one of each and shoot them, and whichever one feels better, I'm going to go with. I think there's just so many decisions like that.
Yeah. Where we just had that broadhead discussion the other day. Mm-hmm. We talked about doing a broadhead episode, like an equipment episode.
Yeah.
And one of the big caveats and one of the concerns that I had, I was like, man, it's just so based on a person's personal preference or their opinion. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you can just go so far one way or the other. It's just, I think we're still going to do it because I feel like I feel like I've been on both ends of the spectrum, so I can kind of give just, here's what I've done.
Right.
Not saying that this is the best way to do it. This is just what I've done.
Yeah.
But there's so much of that stuff out there that's just. Yeah,
and I was at Shields yesterday and just was talking to the guy there about arrows, and he's like, you could go with a smaller diameter arrow. And I was like, well, now you're just blowing my mind because that was something that wasn't even on my radar. And I'm like, I just think there's so many of those different options, and depending on who you talk to, everyone has a personal preference. So that's part of the thing that makes it tough. I think the way that you guys have structured this podcast, you obviously have a lot of hunting experience, both of you, and that's helped me just to like at least have a starting point and then start to research. Like you mentioned like Code of Silence gear, and I know you had those guys on, so I kind of went down the rabbit hole and looking at like some of their gear. There's I think just having that starting point and having people that you trust, I think is helpful. I think for me, one of the challenging things is I don't really have like a true mentor or someone around me that hunts on a regular basis. Like I grew up gun hunting when I was a kid until high school. Then I moved to Iowa, went through like college, never really hunted. When I started, and I've been in Iowa ever since. Okay. Hunted with a guy, that I worked with for a couple of years, and then that was 10 years ago. So I haven't really hunted since then. But like, I think as I was kind of thinking about like this episode and what we might talk about, like I think finding someone that you trust where you can at least get that starting point would be really helpful. And you guys have kind of been that for me through the podcast and just like willing to share information and like we spent some time together at the Iowa Deer Classic and that sort of thing too. So
no, that's awesome. That's really cool.
And that's where it kind of went at the Iowa Deer Classic was you're like, he walks up, he's like, so I'm a new hunter and I'm trying to get into this and I'm trying to figure out all this stuff to buy. And then I feel like I've got it all figured out. And then I started researching scent control and I started realizing that I can do all this and then a deer's going to win me. Like, what? You know what I mean? It was just like, it was like mind blowing.
It might not even matter if they win me every time and I don't see anything. And then I'm going to stop after a year because I hit it.
You're like, I have all this gear. And then if I get a deer on the downwind side, they're going to win me. They can win me. Like, what's this all about? We started talking. I was like, oh yeah, dude. Yeah. And you hear, I've told this story a bunch of different times, right? The whole thing of, we have guys walk up at the shows every year. We had a group of those guys at Wisconsin, those young guys that walk up and they're like, do you have an Ozonics? And they were nice, but they're like, nope. Like, why don't you have one? And they just flat out, they just don't believe in it.
Yeah.
Right. They just don't believe in it. And then you get to talking to them, you're like, all right, man, let's just get this straight. Like, let's just make sure that we're on the same sheet here. Like, you don't have an Ozonics, but you have a Matthews or a Hoyt bow. Yep. Brand new one. Yep. You probably wear Sitka, Kuiu, Code of Silence, First Light, some really awesome clothing. Yep. Okay. You're probably not sitting in your dad's $99 Menards ladder stand. You probably got a really nice hang on or a box blind. Yep. And you got a nice truck or an ATV or this and that and boots, optics, everything else. Yep. You got all this stuff. Let's just say, what do you think you got? $4,000 when you walk into the woods? You know what I mean? Right. Just on your person, And what happens when you get a deer on the downwind side? Well, they win me. All right, man. So all that money, like you can do all that. I won't do any of that, but I get to bring in ozonics and we'll see what happens. Because when I get deer on the downwind side, I have a fighting chance. And some guys still just look at you with a glazed look on their face. You know what I mean? They just don't get it. But that's my whole thing. I think not that it has to start with scent control, because at the end of the day, you don't need an ozonics, right? Like technically, like you can hunt without it. And we all hunted without them for a long time. You know what I mean? I don't want to hunt without it now after seeing what it does, but you need a bow. Yeah. You need an arrow. You need a release. You need to wear something. You can't go out there and butt naked. I mean, you maybe could.
Right.
But you probably don't want to.
Yeah.
I have said that I want to shoot a deer without a shirt on.
Yeah.
I've tried multiple times and it hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. And you got to have double the thermocells because they will do a number on you, mosquitoes in the summertime. Yeah. But it's like, where do you start? You know? So what decisions have you made and what decisions haven't you made? You made a decision on a bow.
I made a decision on a bow.
Have you made a decision on arrows?
I have some arrows, but I think I've shot through them, so I'm probably due for another set of arrows. So I'm like back to the drawing board on arrows. I bought like the Shields Vendetta, cheap arrows, and probably
that's a great way to start.
They're good,
and it's a great way to get shooting
for practice. But I noticed that they and maybe this is the case with every arrow, but they get nicked up and you hit them and that sort of thing. And so that's where I'm kind of at a decision point now where we're 6 months away from the season or 5 months away from the season. So do I buy brand new nice arrows now and then practice with those through the summer or is there a risk that those are going to get nicked up and then I'm going to have to, buy new arrows before the season? So I'm I'm kind of at a decision point with arrows. I have some camo, so I bought a couple of different brands just to try out, like a top from one brand, a bottom from another.
There you go.
Plan on just kind of mixing and matching that way to see what I like, and then try to experience it that way.
I love that. I'm a camo collage.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it.
Yeah, buy what you need rather than what you want.
Yeah.
And then everything else I'm still kind of just trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Whether it's the whole saddle, there's so many decisions.
I know we talked about the saddle, the tree stand,
the mechanical and fixed and tree stand versus saddle, or do I just put up one ladder stand and have a place, and then do I hunt on the ground and try to just experience it and not necessarily go all out the first year, just to be in the woods and experience it and be a little bit more mobile than even you could be with a saddle or with a stand. And just for me, maybe part of I think killing a deer obviously is goal number one, but experiencing and seeing deer and getting close to deer, I think that piece is equally as exciting to me.
Oh yeah.
And 100%. So in year one, it's going to be more of just, I know I'm going to learn a lot and experience good, experience bad, and have some ups and downs. So just trying to work through that in year one, and then figure out, hey, in year two, this is what I actually want to do. So I'm still trying to figure a lot of that stuff out, I guess.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. The biggest thing I would suggest, my advice would be, try to get an arrow sooner than later that you're going to practice with and that you're going to hunt with.
Yeah.
Because the good thing about getting that is then you can really make sure that your sight is dialed in.
Yep.
Because if you shoot an arrow now and then you have because I get what you're saying about they get all nicked up, and they do. The thing you'll kind of learn as you go is, and I break this rule a lot when we shoot farther. I'll just shoot one spot. But if I shoot close, a lot of times I'll shoot different. That's why a lot of paper targets have 5 spots.
Yeah.
Because a lot of target archers, they'll never shoot the same target twice because they'll nick up their really expensive arrows.
Yeah.
So they'll shoot them they'll shoot left, middle, left, like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you're shooting at 20 yards at a shop or something in your yard, that's why a lot of targets have multiple targets. Just shoot at different spots that we don't hit your arrows on accident.
That makes sense.
So that's one thing you can do. But I would just say, try to get an arrow that you're going to practice with, that you're going to hunt with, because then the more time you can put behind a setup and your sight, you're going to really dial in. You're going to notice man, I'm hitting a little high still, I can adjust my sight. But if you practice with an arrow all summer and then you switch to something in the fall, you're basically starting over.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
I think another thing too is, which is really simple, is if you get, say you get a dozen arrows, just set, a quiver full off to the side that you're just not going to shoot until you're actually in the woods.
That's a good way to do it. Just buy 2 dozen.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that sucks because arrows aren't cheap.
Right.
But if you have 2 dozen, you have a dozen that you just set off the side and you go, okay, these are my hunting arrows.
Yeah.
And then you have your dozen that And see, it's interesting though too, because like the traditional thought process of that's very counterintuitive, right? Because like you hear a lot of guys back in the day when everybody used to shoot cedar and wood shafts, and I have buddies that still do this. I won't name their names. He will number his arrows.
I did that too though.
And see what that comes from is way back in the day when guys shoot recurves or longbows, they would shoot cedar shafts, and every shaft would hit maybe just a little different. Well, if they would just like maybe put little tick marks on them to start, right? And like they have like first one would have 1 tick, 2 ticks, 3 ticks, or whatever, or however they kept track of them, right? Or they would number them at first, and they would every time they got to number 5, man, that thing just hit perfect. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden, number 5 became number 1.
So they would pull out the ones that were
better. They would look at
hunting arrows.
They would look at their dozen
target.
arrows and they'd be like, "Man, these 3 arrows group better than those ones do."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they shoot better because that's just on cedar shafts. Their spine can be a little bit tricky, especially back in the day.
Yeah.
And so some guys still do that with carbon arrows. They'll shoot arrows and they'll be like, "I feel like these ones fly better," and then those will be the ones that they shoot during season.
Yeah.
I
did that too for sure because I fletched all my arrows myself, and so I knew that there was probably going to be some variance between arrows. It was my first time doing it, so I figured that there was going to be some issues. So I did that too last year. I found, I think, like 3 or 4 that I grouped really well, and after shooting them a couple times, then I marked them off and set those aside for the fall. But that was the first time I've ever done that. But
yeah.
I think it is good to do that because I think in any setup there could be a little difference.
Oh yeah, big time.
An arrow might just fly better than another one.
Well, and that's the whole idea, right? Like a bow setup, it's a bunch of variables. It's nothing but variables.
Yeah.
Your fletching's a variable, your nock's a variable, your spine of your arrow's a variable, the broadhead that you're shooting is a variable, the way you draw back, the way you put pressure on the
everything,
on the grip, it all is a variable, and it can change. You know what I mean? So if you find something that starts to work and you find a setup that you're like, wow, those ones hit perfect, make those your hunting arrows.
Yeah.
But I would say practice with the ones you hunt with. That'll get you a lot farther.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
That's helpful.
Yeah. But it's hard, man. There's so many out there. Like I said, I mean, that's I think the thing. And again, I'm talking a lot about like carpentry stuff because I feel like that's something that I'm kind of, not that I'm a newbie because I work construction, right? I'm not a contractor, but like, I still got all my fingers, you know what I mean? So I kind of like, I know you're doing something right, but I'm in the market to buy stuff. He was looking at my fingers to see if I had them all. Yeah, I'm missing. I know. Yeah, I do that to the kids. Like I'm like, see what happens? And they're like, Joe be like, what? You only have 9 fingers? I'm like, yeah. See, and then it switches. No, but yeah, it's just trying to figure out what do you buy.
Right.
There's so much stuff out there, and it's like, well, which one do I need, or how do I decide? It's just crazy. So you decided on bow. You're trying to decide on arrows. That's the thing. What I was just going to say there about the arrows too is like, there's so much out there about smaller diameter shafts and larger diameter shafts. When we do the broadhead one, I still have arrows from forever ago that were like the size of my thumb. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can shoot them with anything.
Yeah.
Like, smaller diameter is better, right? It creates less friction. It,
More penetration.
Yep. It just, there's not as much for it to drag against, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But there's so much stuff out there. It really comes down to good, better, best. How much do you want to spend?
Well, and I think you made a good point. Like, there's so many variables. Just figure out what works best for your setup because based off of your poundage and your draw length and all those factors come into play.
Exactly.
I think.
What are you shooting for pounds on your bow?
60 pounds.
There you go. That's where
28 and a half draw, I think.
Perfect. 60 is a perfect number.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of guys when they first start out shoot way too much weight that they don't need to.
Yeah.
60 is a great number. I shot a moose with a 60-pound bow years ago. Like you can shoot a deer with 60 pounds. I've shot recurves at 50 pounds. I mean, 55, 50 pounds, you can shoot a deer at 60 pounds, no problem.
Well, yeah, and you think about too, like, the youth bows and stuff. I shot my first deer with the bow when I was 12 years old. Like, there's no way I was pulling anywhere near 60 pounds. You know what I mean?
I think Iowa has a minimum on draw weight.
I think is it 40?
40 sounds right, or 35, 40.
I think, it might be 35 actually. But
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's like, that just goes to show you can do it.
Yeah, you can do it.
With just about anything.
Oh, yeah, way less weight than you think. And again, the lighter you bow, the less weight you're pulling, the more accurately you can probably hold it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's less tension and stuff. But what bow did you end up buying?
I bought the Hoyt Torex.
Oh,
there
nice.
you go.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's cool.
So did you shoot like other brands and stuff like that too, or did you kind of go in knowing that that's what you wanted?
I had done some research and like that was one of the ones that made the list. And then I shot a couple of different ones. And that one just felt the best and went from there.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, the whole fixed mechanical that is crazy.
That's a tough one.
If you held a gun to my head and asked me what I would tell you to do, and I'm going to tell you, I would say shoot fixed.
Yeah, that's probably what I'd say too. Yep,
especially to start. Just because, fixed broadheads, there's less to go wrong.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes bow hunting can be like, maybe this is a really crazy analogy, but it's like flying an airplane. It's like preventative maintenance. It's like you don't probably need to fix that, but if it does go wrong and worst case scenario happens, we don't die, right? Like that's the nice thing about broadheads. Like if you shoot a fixed blade, and if everything just goes to, fruit basket upset, you're still going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started shooting mechanical, but then switched to fixed, and now I'm back on mechanical. Yeah.
Yep. See, I was a fixed guy forever. I was a recurve guy, traditional bow hunter before. Well, I shot a compound for a while, and then I went to a recurve, and now I'm back at a compound again.
Yeah.
And I shot fixed with a compound, then I shot fixed, obviously, on traditional, and then I shot fixed to start on the compound again. Now I'm in mechanical.
Yeah.
But I'm only on mechanical on deer, and then I'm on fixed on everything else, bigger stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And turkey, mechanical on turkey.
Mechanical on turkeys.
Yeah.
Yep.
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 But that's another thing too that is whatever way you choose, like it's fine.
Oh yeah. It's not the end of the world.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah. I mean, it matters, but it's like just depends on what you, like you said,
right.
What you
personal preference.
Liking.
Yeah. There's so much stuff out there. The reason I like fixed blades is because, again, this year is a perfect example. For whatever reason, I had a lot of deer ducking like I've never seen deer duck before. Meaning, when deer are standing there, if you looked at it from a slow-mo perspective, a lot of times they load, meaning they kind of dip down before they move off. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so they'll duck. And your guys, I was talking about ducking the string. And so, for whatever reason, I just had a lot of deer that felt like they really, really ducked. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is all you can control is when the arrow is in the bow. The minute it leaves the bow, it's out of your hands. You know what I mean? And if that deer ducks or he takes a half step and you hit him high or low or left or right, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some people might say, well, the nice thing about a mechanical is it rips a bigger hole. Yeah, you're right. It does. But sometimes a bad thing with the mechanical is if it does hit right or left, up or down, or hits a bone, it stops.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're mechanical or we're a fixed blade, you're probably going to get better penetration.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what else? So, you haven't decided on saddle or tree stand, huh?
I have not, no.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I am probably just going to buy a couple ladder stands, I think, this year.
I think
there's a couple of places of public that are within 20 minutes of my house. Just get out after work really easy, have a preset, be able to go, like have those places to go. And then, if I want to explore other places, either, probably just go hunt on the ground, like I said, and give that a try too.
Do you feel like are you gonna only hunt public, or are you gonna try to hunt private too?
I don't have any private. Okay. There's a couple places near my house where I've seen 50 or 60 deer in a field in a night, and I'm like, I probably should go knock on those doors just in case. But most likely it'll be mostly public.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think a ladder stand is a great starting point, just because, like you said, it's set It's there. You can crawl up in it real easy, real quick, rather than having to hang a set and stuff. I think that's a really good place to start.
Yeah, I think that's I would be interested to hear your perspective on this, but I feel like that's one thing that's really changed in the last like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like this whole hang and hunt thing.
Yeah, definitely.
You hear a lot of guys, and again, that's kind of, it was like, it kind of went from like tree stand hunting to like hang and hunting to now like saddle hunting.
Yeah.
This is like kind of this like been this progression, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing I don't like about, we do a lot of hang and hunts because if we're trying to run two tree stands, or if we're just trying to go into a different spot, maybe you just end up just hanging hunting. But the thing I don't like about it is you make a ton of noise.
Yeah.
And you get it all sweated up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's dark and it can just be a little tricky. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It can just be a little tricky.
Yeah.
Well, and I think for me too, like part of the overwhelming part, we talked about like the wind, like knowing where to actually set up at.
Yeah.
And so like being able to put a little bit more thought into like, this is where my ladder stand's going to be. This is the trail that I'm going to hunt. These are the winds that I can hunt it on.
Yeah.
Rather than having to go into every single spot and like evaluate wind and evaluate trail. Like I think that just becomes for me like really overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so
the thing I was going to say to you earlier, that when you were talking about that too, the thing that I feel like if I were in your position and I think about back on it now, like as if I was a new hunter, I feel like what I would do is I would go and I would hunt one spot. I would just concentrate on one spot, especially because like what you said, here's the thing. I would hunt one spot for you because of the way it sounds like you want to do it.
Sure.
Right? Like you're talking about, you're like, hey man, I want to get out there and I want to experience it. I want to learn. I want to try to shoot a deer. I want to just see what happens. I want to see if I like this. I think sometimes that's not the reason people get into it. They get into it because they want to just shoot a giant.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like
I mean, I would be happy with
yeah, you, me, and everybody else.
But I'm also like trying to be realistic and like set realistic goals for myself. And I know I'm not going to shoot a 200-inch deer my first year.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
stuff
You
like
never know.
that.
But yeah.
Right. Right.
We're going to have you on the podcast in like mid-December and I'm going to be selling all my stuff because Andrew's going to go out there and kill a mega giant and be like, I'm rethinking everything that I'm doing. Maybe you should be giving the advice.
Yeah.
No, but what I was going to say is like, I like the idea of putting a tree stand on one spot and hunting there.
Yeah.
Because the nice thing is, you know, I think sometimes what people fall into, and I fall into this too, I do a lot of jumping around. And we lean on, I feel like a lot of guys lean on cell cams now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But the nice thing about if you put yourself in one spot, you hunt there, and you hunt there 20 days throughout the fall, you're going to see and experience a lot.
Right.
All of a sudden you'll be like, wow, I thought this was the trail that I need to be on, but they're coming out right over there. That's where I need to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they walk out and man, that buck comes in here and he checks every this, and he walks out over that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, or like, I thought this is where I need to be on the trail, but come to find out when they come through on the trail here, they're not broadside. You know what I mean? I need to be down this way a bit more so I can get a better shot angle. Bop-a-da-bop-a-da-bop.
Yeah.
I feel like you'll learn a lot by just putting the time in on one spot. That might add up to more pressure on a spot. That can be the negative. But the nice thing is I feel like especially right away, you're just going to learn a lot about what's going on.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really helpful.
Yeah. And there's a bunch of good ladders out there that you can get at a reasonable price. Like we were just looking at Muddy. It's got a bunch of good ladder stands that you can get for a really affordable price right now. They've had some really good deals on their website in different places.
Yeah, they're good and they're pretty cost effective too. They're not too bad. They won't break the bank.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of hang on. If it were me, I would probably buy a hang on just because the bad thing about public land, and unfortunately there are stupid people out there, is you can rip a ladder down.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And somebody else can get up in it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you did do a hang on and you just took the bottom step out, like,
It's pretty tough.
yeah, nobody's going to jump 6 feet up to try to climb up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But that's the other thing you could do too. And I used to do this a lot years and years ago. And I've had some stupid experiences this year that I feel like I need to rethink things, but you can chain it in.
Yeah.
Just chain your ladder in at the top. Just go to
Just
anywhere.
put a padlock on it or something
Yeah,
to
yeah.
keep it safe.
Yep. Try to put the padlock on the backside so it's not like easy for them to get to.
Yeah.
Again, if a guy wants to carry bolt cutters out there and cut it down, he's going to cut it down.
Right.
More power to them.
But yeah, another thing I've done too after I started doing that with chains is you can go to any hardware store. They'll know what it is, and just say, "Hey, I'm looking to try to take the chrome off of a chain," and they'll sell you like some acid. You know, it's like in a little container, You like put it in a 5-gallon bucket and put your chain in there. It'll take the shine off the chain.
Yeah.
So it doesn't sit up there and look like it's like reflecting,
Shining.
shining. It looks when it just be all rusty, but who cares? It looks just like the tree. Then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
I do that a lot. I have a lot of rusty chains in my garage.
Yeah.
Just for that reason.
Yep.
Going back to what Nick said earlier, because I do want to. I think what I rudely cut you off. I am really sorry, Nick.
fine.
Nope. I'm sorry. I'm going on the podcast and saying that I made a mistake. That I was being a not nice person. Because I was having a hard time following what your question was, so I cut you off. I am sorry.
Apology accepted.
Okay, thank you. I really that
welcome.
makes me feel way better.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay. No, but to go back to what Nick was saying earlier, I do want to expand on that. Do you feel like when you watch stuff on YouTube, do you watch stuff like just based on like just the information you're looking for, or do you when you watch stuff you're like, oh wow, this video's got 37,000 views, like, or this is this person or that person, or does that make any difference to you?
The view, like, I don't look at number of views or anything like that.
Yeah.
I think,
Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yeah,
like,
essentially.
I think
yeah.
there's different people that, you know, I try to relate to, or like, I'm being in Iowa, like,
Yeah.
just look like trying to, like, when it more like tactical stuff, I'm like, okay, these people can relate because they're in similar terrain and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I would say I try to find something that's going to relate to what I'm doing. But yeah, if there's people that I trust and or that I have watched material from them in the past, I'll check those out a little bit more, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just there's so much, and man, I feel like I keep saying that, but there's just so much out there, and it's just
Well, we live in this day and age. I mean,
crazy.
look what we're doing right now.
What-
I mean, we live in this day of.
Right.
I mean, if somebody 5 years ago would have said content creation, I would have been like, "What?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what we live in now. I mean, it's everywhere. It's anything. It doesn't matter if it's hunting or if it's carpentry or if it's photography or if it's bird watching.
Yeah.
I mean, you get on YouTube or Google and you put in a search and it is insane.
Yeah.
How much stuff's out there.
And I feel like it's both a blessing, but also like kind of the curse too, right? Like
Yes.
it's not like there's nothing out there, so you have no starting point.
Yeah.
But there's just it's like just sifting through and filtering through and figuring out, you know,
Yeah.
like this resonates with me, so I'm gonna look more into that or
Yep.
this or that too. I think so.
Yep.
It's nice that they're like 25 years ago. There's not nearly as much information out there. I think so. If you were starting then, you're trusting a family member or some random, you know, random guy at the bow shop, and that's your, you know, that's your only, only way to get information and stuff. So I think, you know, part of it is nice that there is places to go and try to learn and that information's there.
Yeah,
Definitely.
It is kind of crazy. We were talking about that before we started today. It is wild how much it's changed. I mean, I'm 39. I think about when I was 20, when I was 15, 18, 20, you know, outdoor TV was the thing. You just watched outdoor TV or you bought DVDs, right? Like that was back in the day when you bought DVDs and watched hunting videos, you know?
Yep.
And before that I'm the first time I wish I still had them. I had VHS tapes, Monster Buck VHS tapes.
100%.
Oh yeah. But that was how you watched a lot of stuff. And then, like you said, you just went into your local bow shop. The thing I feel like that's changed now, and I think to your point, what's so hard is there's so much right at your fingertips.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where before it was like, oh, okay, I saw this here, and then I would maybe talk to a buddy, or I would then maybe drive to the local shop and then drive home. But you could be like looking at it in the parking lot after you just listen to the guy in the archery shop tell you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy how much is out there.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. So still trying to decide about a saddle or a tree stand. Talking about probably doing ladders.
Yep.
That makes sense. I like the idea of hunt one spot. I think that would be a really great thing to do. That's the thing to do too, man. Like I said, if you have questions on gear, I do that with buddies all the time. I mean, I feel like I'm your kind of springboard a lot. And sometimes you're mine too.
Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to decide on a new hat.
Yeah.
My day-to-day wear is getting a little worn out.
Yeah, it is.
Just buy a new bow, and then they'll give you one.
Yeah. Oh, that's probably true. If Buddy or Scott are listening to this, they're like, why don't you wear an Ozonics hat, dummy? But I don't know. I'm real particular on my hat.
Yeah, really particular. I am too, though.
You know what's funny is I've worn 2 hats in the last probably 15 years. The hat that I wore before the Kuiu hat that I wear now, I've been wearing that Kuiu hat since before I worked at Ozonics. So that's been over 8 years. But the hat I had before that, I wore it so long, it was a Jim's Sport Shop in Waverly, Iowa. I don't even think it's there anymore, but it used to be there. Jim's Sport Shop. And he had these hats, and it was this real tree camo that looked like it was like a Western camo. I don't even remember what it was, like Max 4 or something like that. And I wore that hat constantly, man. That was my hat. I wore it until I wore it to a Vikings game. And Tatum got me Vikings tickets. My wife got me Vikings tickets. So we went there to the game. She was sick the whole way there. She's like, I think I'm going to be sick. I'm like, oh, we got these tickets. Like, we got to go. So we go, like do the ticket thing, get all in there, walk up. We're in like the end zone. We're in the upper deck, get up there, get sat down. We're sitting there and she's just like getting greener and greener. I'm like, oh man, the national anthem starts and we stand up for the national anthem and she sits back down and she's like, I'm going to puke. I'm like, what? It's like, I'm going to puke right now. Well, all I had was my hat.
Oh, God.
So I took off my hat and I handed her my hat. And she spewed in my hat.
Oh, jeez.
So here I am holding this hat with all this barf in it. There was like 4 or 5 people to the right of us, and they were so nice. They looked over and they saw, and they all just started moving out of the way. And I looked at them, and the guy was like, come on. So she walks out, and I walk out, and I'm holding this hat in my hand like this. We walk down the steps, go to the bathrooms. She goes in the bathroom. I go to the bathroom like, oh my gosh. So I try to clean it off the best I can. It was so bad, dude. It was so bad. And I don't know what that puke did to it. Well, I had to wash it. That's what happened. I had to wash it when I got home, right? So here I am. I'm like, do I throw it in the garbage? Like, do I just bring it with me? I'm like, this hat means too much to me. I'm bringing it. So I washed it out in the sink the best I could, like really good with hot water and really good. We go out to the car. We go out to the car. We drive all the way home. I got to watch the second half of the game on TV because we missed the whole first half. I washed that hat, and that hat didn't make it another month. The dirt was just so soaked in there. You know what I mean? That's the way my hat is now.
Yeah.
But it's starting to really wear down.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bill especially.
Yeah.
The bill's starting to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
That's nothing to do with the podcast.
It's all right.
I don't know how we got on that subject.
Bouncing ideas off each other.
Oh yeah. So Nick is always. You got a couple things right now you're looking at buying.
Yeah, but like we talked about though, that's definitely more of a want than need. It's nothing too crazy.
Yep.
Last year was definitely a really big year
For buying stuff.
Just because I felt like last year was my first year ever hunting, kind of. Just because I grew up hunting all.
Believe me, it felt like it was.
Yeah, yeah. Because I was, I hunted.
You know what I'm dealing with now, Andrew. See, this is what I deal with every day. No, I'm just kidding.
Because I grew up hunting private land, so it was like, it's pretty simple. Like all the stands were set where I hunted my entire life, so it was just easy. Just go hunt, and that was it. But then now, hunting public land and trying new stuff, it was kind of like a whole new world. So last year, honestly, I kind of was in the same boat as you. Like, what do I like? What do I get? Yada, yada, yada. But I definitely feel like I'm in a better spot going into this year. So,
what's one piece of advice you wish someone would have given you last year that you could give me for this year, since you just went through it?
That's a good question.
I would say this is kind of, I don't know if this answers your question too good, but I got really, really hung up on big deer in Iowa.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest thing. I just I got way too in over my head. I thought I was just way too hung up on trying to shoot a big deer and stuff like that. And
which I think is every guy that moves to Iowa, they all do that.
Yeah.
They think there's a 180 around every corner, I'm telling you. And there's guys, and I've had friends that have come here as a non-resident, got a tag and shot 160 plus.
Yeah.
It does happen.
Yeah.
But it's just they're hard to come by.
And the reason I kind of say that too is because I felt it. I didn't really get too much chance to hunt. Obviously, I filmed Cole a ton. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the year, I kind of had a weird feeling man, I had my first season in Iowa. I had such high hopes. I didn't kill anything. And I kind of felt down about it. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, I just had an unreal year experiencing Iowa for the first time, really. Being able to have trail cameras out and experience the big bucks here. Like that's like you're saying, like the experience is what it's about. Like, like I just kind of felt myself getting down sometimes, and like I wasn't getting chances and stuff. Like I guess what I'm saying is like, yeah, it's Iowa, but like it's still hard. It's still hunting. And so I would say focus on the experience for sure. And I think you already have that mindset, which is really good to go and starting with that. So
yeah. Oop, I forgot to mute my phone. That would be the biggest thing I would say too, is like, yeah, man, just make sure you're doing it. You know, like, okay, so when I used to guide a lot, guys would come in, I would always ask them what their why was. Like, why are you here? Like, why are you doing this? And it's funny when you ask that, some guys got really emotional, you know what I mean? Some guys were super excited. They knew right off the bat. And some guys would get frustrated, you know what I mean? Because you're like, well, what do you mean? It's like, well, why are you here? Like, why are you doing this? Because inevitably, there's going to be a point, and every hunt's a little different, right? If you're doing like a guided elk hunt and you're staying in a lodge, it's pretty cush, you know what I mean? Like, but still, there's going to be a time when you're going to be tired, you may be cold, you're going to be frustrated, and the why you're doing this is really going to, you know, that's going to come to the forefront of the experience, and you may react, you know, you may get angry or yell or whatever, you know what I mean? Or you may be like, I'm tired of this and I quit. So why are you doing this? Like, let's just make sure that we're all on the same page here.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing I would say for you is just make sure that you keep at the forefront that you're talking about experience, like what's your why? Like, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And don't let outside things, I think to your point earlier, like there's so much information out there. I think that the idea, like I think a lot of people like the idea of hunting more than they actually like hunting.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? They like the idea, meaning they like the affirmation or the recognition or whatever that is. That's not me. But I think that in this day and age, that's a slippery slope that you can slide down into. You know what I mean? So like the biggest thing I would say is just make sure that you're doing it for why you want to be doing it.
Yeah.
And don't let anybody else, including us or anybody else, like change that for you.
Yeah.
You know, like the last how many years I've been really dead on shooting a ton of deer. That's what I've really wanted to do. I've just wanted to shoot a bunch of deer, and that's what I've been doing. Like some people may think that's kind of stupid, and that's probably cost me chances at other bucks. You know what I mean? But I wanted to shoot a pile of deer, so that's what I've wanted to do.
Yeah,
and that was my why. You know, and so I would just say for you, just keep that straight, because I think that can be something that I think people can easily get distracted by.
Yeah, definitely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good advice.
Have you gone down the rabbit hole of trail cameras yet?
I have. I bought 4 trail cameras off of like Facebook Marketplace, but I haven't put them out yet.
Cell cams or regular cams?
Cell cams.
Nice. What'd you get?
I don't even remember the brand, like Spy Point or something.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Like
Those are good.
Yeah.
there was like 4 for $100. I was like, that sounds like
There you go.
a good a good deal, and for what I'm like, again, just getting into it and like a good price point.
Yeah.
So I'll probably put like you guys have yours out now, but for turkeys, right? Do I need to like? Am I behind the game?
No, we're crazy people. We have a trail cam problem, dude.
We're crazy. We're crazy. We're going to leave our camps out until December, baby. You ain't even taking them down.
I'm not taking them down.
I'm not taking them down either.
We're not taking them down. I'm leaving my campers out till December, baby. I'm never taking them down. I'm paying for subscription all year round. I don't care if my wife gets mad.
She is going to get mad too. She's like, what is this $73 charge every month on the credit card?
I know. Between rent, insurance, trail cams.
Yeah, that's terrible. No, you don't have to have them out this time of year. We're just crazy people.
This is my first year I've ever left them out in the spring.
It's really fun. We've already got a buck on camera. Did we put that in the last podcast?
We talked about it.
Oh.
Didn't put it in.
Okay.
Didn't put the picture in.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't have it.
I gave it to you, didn't I?
Not the HD.
But couldn't you have just pulled it off my thing?
I don't know, maybe. I don't know. It was very brief.
Oh, okay.
So
we have a buck on camera already he's really noticeable because he's got double splits on his ears.
Oh.
So his ears are all chewed up on both sides. I almost wonder if he was born that way because they are like consistent.
It's really weird.
Yeah. He's got like a cuts on the lower that splits it, and he's got cut up above that splits. And his bases are good.
Can I show him?
Yeah, and he's already pretty big. Like, he's pretty far off his head for being like end of April. I was pretty stoked about it. But that's where it's fun to have trail cams out now, is because you just start to see him grow.
You see him grow.
Yeah. But
speaking of, we just got a couple trail cams.
Oh, gall. No, but yeah, sell cams out this early. It's only for the crazy people like us. You don't need to. Okay, so one thing that we've talked about before that I'm really interested in, that I like to do a lot, is the Hush program.
Yep.
But there's also a thing, they call it Field to Fork, right?
Yeah.
And you just got involved in that.
Yes.
You signed up for it.
I signed up, yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's just an online form. I registered, I think, last fall or last winter.
Yep.
And then just got an email about it last week. And so essentially, I think you're assigned a hunting mentor or a couple of mentors, and then there's a group of people that go through the program together. There's a 1 day per week where you have like 2 hours to go shoot your bow. For people that don't have bows, they provide those for you. They provide bows and arrows. There's like a couple of field days where I think they help you like put up like a tree stand and show you like tree stand safety.
Cool.
It's like all the way through the like processing of deer and gutting deer. Like they show you everything. And then I think based off of what I have, like once you actually harvest, if you're lucky enough to harvest one in the fall, then someone will like come and help you gut it and drag it out and like kind of just be there, like to help you experience it. And so one of the things I'm really looking forward to is just like having other people that have some of these questions that we've talked about to kind of go through and experience with and bounce ideas off of other people that are new to hunting or learning to hunt, and hopefully like find some people, like, you know, build some friendships and find people that kind of have that interest. So really excited to go through that program.
That's neat.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
So is it
really cool.
Is it people that volunteer to be these like hunting mentors, or is it all through the Iowa DNR?
You pay the Iowa DNR, but I think they have a couple of like volunteers that have volunteered to be mentors, and then like there is a cost associated for me to be a part of the program, but that covers like target and archery time for all the practice rounds and like just the materials and all of those types of things. So
that's cool.
But it's awesome. Pretty limited like price point to get into it, and like really interested to learn. Like it hasn't kicked off yet. I think the first one's in like July, so it'll be through the summer and then into the fall when season starts. So really excited about that too.
That is sweet.
Yeah, dude, that's pretty sweet. Well, that's pretty cool because there's like some really, I mean, between the Hush program, that program, and the other one I was thinking of is is it Field to Fork?
That's what this one's called.
Is that what that?
Yeah. This one's Field to Fork.
Okay, then then I'm thinking of a different thing. What's the one where you can sign up and you can be on a list if somebody's looking for deer meat? That's called something different. You know what I'm talking about?
Isn't that the Hush program?
No. Is
that different?
Yeah, there's another thing that you can do. What's it? You know what I'm talking about? You have a really blank look on your face. There's a thing that you can do on the Iowa DNR site or the Iowa DNR app that you can sign up for it. And if you shoot deer and there's people looking for deer, like there's a lot of people right now that are really, everybody's into organic and this and that. People are realizing that venison is super good for you. Well, they're never going to have the opportunity to shoot a deer, but they want deer meat.
Yeah.
So you can sign up for this and it will find people in your area that are looking for deer meat. And then you can, when you shoot a deer, you basically get on this message forum or whatever, or you text them and then say, hey, I just shot a deer. And then you can either give them the whole deer or have it you could process yourself and give it to them. There's it basically is a way to get people connected.
So like an exchange program, essentially.
Basically, yeah. It's like a deer exchange program,
really
like
cool.
a deer meat exchange.
Huh. Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Who told me about that? It might have been that depredation biologist that I was talking
maybe.
about that. I think we've talked about it on the podcast.
I feel like I remember you talking about the depredation guy talking about that.
Okay,
maybe.
but anyway, but yeah, that Field to Fork, that's a neat idea.
Yeah. The DNR has some really great programs. Like, I feel like, just being new to the whole like hunting thing in Iowa, like when you guys have had the DNR on or talked about like all the statistics and all the information and all the habitat stuff they're doing, like the Iowa DNR seems like they do a really good job of trying to bring people together and make Iowa a great place to hunt. So it's been cool to learn about that kind of through this process also.
Yeah.
I would say the other thing that you could check out that I think you would like, which I don't know why more people don't get involved in this. And it's like funny because you always see them at the Iowa Deer Classic and it's just a small little booth and like people just kind of walk right by, is the Iowa Bowhunters Association. That's another really cool thing. Just the IBA, Iowa Bowhunters Association. It's actually kind of cool. They hire a lobbyist that goes to all the state legislative sessions, and like make sure that the things that are important to hunters and bow hunters are heard, just don't get kind of passed by, or if there's things that are trying to get slipped through, they send out weekly emails or monthly emails about it. But it's pretty cool. Iowa Bow Hunters Association, they do a really good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a neat thing too. And they have cool shoots that you can go to, and there's tons of bow hunters.
Very cool.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. One of the things that Cole and I tend to kind of talk about and come back to a lot is scouting in general, I'd say. We kind of always talk about how one of our favorite times to scout is kind of this time between really now and at the end of the season, just because, it looks like the fall. Were you able to do any scouting this spring?
Actually, it's interesting. We were talking about this before the podcast because where I live, there's so much land within like an hour of my house.
Oh my gosh.
And so I've probably driven past 25 or 30 different pieces of public. I've boots on the ground scouted 5 or 6 pieces that are within range of my house. My wife jokes though. She's like, I thought hunting was in the fall, and she's like, you're going for another drive and looking for land. What are you doing? I was like, I'm looking, just trying to figure out where the land is and what it looks like.
Yeah,
You're like, hunting is all year round. It never stops.
it's such a problem, dude.
Yeah.
I hunt. I don't hunt 365 days a year, but I figure out a way to think about hunting 365 days a year.
Yeah, we were coming home from dinner the other night, and there was a back road you can take through some gravel that goes by a public spot. And she's like, "Where are you going?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna drive by this piece just to see if there's any deer out feeding."
That's awesome.
And so just trying to incorporate more of that and try to figure out hey, am I seeing deer around this spot?
Yeah.
And then if so, then trying to scout a little bit.
Yeah.
Haven't done it as much this spring, but because I didn't hunt last year, I started in December through kind of February and was able to look at a couple places.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's probably been my biggest thing that I've learned in the last year is being able to go walk some public spots, and you learn a lot from doing it. I think that'd be a good piece of advice too. Is it's really good to just go walk and see sign and try and piece the puzzle together. And I think that's been one thing that I've definitely learned in the last year.
Yeah,
it's been a big help for me, I think.
Yeah, one of the places close to my house, they actually they trimmed all those trees where you guys were talking about that on one of the podcasts where they cut all the trees down.
Yeah.
They did that between a piece of CRP and a river bottom where there was 300 yards of willows. I went by the other day and they're completely gone.
Because they're invasive technically.
Yeah, and there was I found a bunch of rubs and buck bedding, and I was real excited. And now it's gone. I was like, where's that buck gonna go?
I know. Isn't that funny? Yeah. It's a balancing act when it comes to from the biological perspective and the conservation perspective and the hunting perspective.
Yeah,
there's a balancing act.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
tricky.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that would be the one thing, and this isn't really a question, it's just a piece to something to think about. One of the things that I think that you'll definitely experience this fall that you're most likely not thinking about at all right now is when you get cold, and it can wear on you. You know what I mean? And a lot of times, say, you just try to grit your teeth and do what you can, but man, it is tough.
Yeah.
I feel like I figured out ways to stay warm. One of the things that we've talked about this on other podcasts, I really swear by heated insoles in my boots.
Yeah.
Battery powered heated insoles. A lot of Thermacell makes one that you can use your phone with. Hand warmers, because like I said, and again, you get cold and then you're up in the air and it just makes everything harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Definitely.
So just be real cognizant of that. Try to stay warm.
Yeah.
Whatever you can do to stay warm. Bring more clothes than you think you need.
Yeah. Yep.
Because once you get cold, you're gonna be like, "Yep, this sucks. I'm going home.
I'm out of here.
I'm out of here." Are you? That's the other thing too to think about. Are you gonna? I would definitely recommend wearing a harness.
Yeah.
Like a safety harness,
Yeah.
even in a ladder stance.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Always wear it.
Yep. Always wear harnesses. I hear a lot of guys that don't wear harnesses.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I've got buddies that don't wear harnesses. Shoot.
I never wore a harness when I was growing up, but now thinking back, and I was like, I was 12 years old walking up a ladder stand with my gun, how
I
so
know.
definitely something I'll do this time around.
Yeah. It's funny how that's something that's really changed. You know what I mean? Because I was the same way.
Yeah.
Growing up, I never. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time really high up in trees, just sitting there, wind blowing, Now you think twice about it.
It's crazy.
It's crazy when you think about it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I would never do that now.
No.
I'm even more ridiculous about it. I mean, shouldn't say ridiculous, just more paranoid or whatever you want to call it. Like I use lifelines. I swear by lifelines.
Yeah. Yeah, they're really nice.
Yep, they're super nice. Mm-hmm. They're super nice. What do you think's been the biggest? What do you think so far as you've just been doing the research that something you're like, man, I didn't think about that, or I was really surprised by when it comes to gear or tactics? Is there anything that it's really kind of like feel like has been like really blown your mind?
I think the way that people describe like terrain features and stuff is just so different, and trying to like, I think that's been the like another theme of the podcast is overwhelmingness, but like just like people talk about ridge tops and funnels and edge and transition and like all of those different things. And I think like as I've scouted, like I've been able to see some of those types of things.
Yes.
But like not seeing deer in those same scenarios and understanding how they're using those different features, I think that'll be something that I'll learn a lot of. But just the way that people talk about like edge and access and, like going from, CRP to egg, like all of this different stuff. There's just so much of that out there, and trying to figure out like when I'm like, you can look at a map and, you talked about like the topo maps and how that's really helped you. And like when I'm looking at it, I'm like, what am I like? I can see it, but what am I actually looking for here?
What does it mean?
And then like trying to take that and then like apply it to the field. I think that piece is still something that I haven't like figured out, and it'll probably take me a while to figure out. But I think that's been like kind of a surprise of like how difficult like the scouting piece is going from map to actual like in like real application.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, and again, I hope this doesn't come off like a knock towards anybody or any systems or programs that are out there, but sometimes I feel like, again, it's like over information.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because when I was first starting out, there was none of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you just were like, okay, this is where the deer have to be bedding. This is where they have to be eating.
Yeah.
And this is where they're working through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like don't overcomplicate it.
Right.
And that's what I was saying earlier. I think, dude, if you just get out into a spot and you just put a tree stand and you put your time in on one piece for the whole year, and then you go, okay, I'm hunting this spot.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to understand what's happening on this piece of ground. And then all of a sudden you'll see a saddle and you'll see a pinch point, you'll see a funnel, and you'll kind of start to understand like that's what's happening here. Because again, I think, and that's the other thing too, like, I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like when it comes to be the rut, it's all out the window.
Yeah, exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when there's a hot doe, like they're going to go where they go.
Yeah.
Not that you shouldn't, like you don't want to just go sit out in the middle of nowhere when there's this awesome tract of timber over here, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for me, like the scrapes and rubs and like trail, like it's pretty easy to identify like where deer are moving, and then you find 10 or 12 rubs in a along a fence line or wherever. Yep. And I think so those pieces have been like really easy to pick up, and I'm like, okay, there's obviously deer in this area.
Yep.
So yeah, I think finding places like that is a starting point, and then working off of that, I think is probably what I'll end up doing, just because like you have that basis of like, okay, deer are in this area.
Yep.
And that's a good place to at least see deer. Maybe not getting close to them is probably another.
Yep. Well, that's
challenge,
I think probably one of the differences between North Iowa and like Central Iowa, and just having lived in Ames and hunted around there a lot. The biggest difference between here and there is there's just a lot more contour down there.
Yeah.
There's a lot more up and down. And what I experienced there, and what I always really hung my hat on, and again, this was pre-Onyx and pre all the apps. Back then, we literally just had Google Maps. Like that's what you went off of, The thing that I always hung my hat on about Central Iowa is that generally speaking, like there's going to be deep cuts or ravines, and those deer are going to bed off of those ravines where they can see and smell what they need to see and smell. And then they're going to move up or down from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And if I can find where they may be feeding, and I can find where they maybe need water, and I can find where I can sneak in and get to a spot, that's kind of what I would go off of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you think about where we went down in there, like that's a lot of what it is you're hunting off of cuts because there's just more contour.
Right.
Here it just gets so flat. Not that there isn't roll here too, but there's just less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a lot flatter up here.
And I think that sometimes I see that almost as an advantage to where we hunt, because when you find that little roll or that little bit of contour, I think deer are more keen to use that just because there's not as much really.
Yes.
I think another thing that I kind of find myself doing is almost kind of working backwards. Like you go sit and hunt a spot, you see deer doing the same thing every single time, and then I think that can sometimes be a good time to go and look at a map and be like, okay, why are they doing this? Why are they using this trail? What is actually there? What does the LiDAR map show to why they're kind of using this? So I guess you could say you're kind of almost working backwards a little bit. But again, it just goes back to saying you just need to experience it kind of and kind of work from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about just being in the woods.
Yeah, I think that's the best scouting and learning you can do.
Yeah.
Just be out there. For sure.
So with your job, will you have the ability to get out during the week, or you just plan on kind of weekend warrioring it, or how are you going to try to take some time off in the fall?
So I work from home
there you go.
and have some flexibility that way. So there'll be, and don't really have, I'm lucky I work in a software company. So like flexible start times and flexible finish times. So if I want to get out in the morning before work or take off at 3:30 or 4 to get out in the afternoon, I have some of that flexibility too. Nice. So I'll be able to like, not hunt every day, but have enough freedom within my job to like rearrange my schedule to be able to get out 2 or 3 times a week too.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be the next rabbit hole that you go down. You're like talking about maps. Wait till you start going down the when do I go?
Yeah. Like Deercast or whatever.
Oh yeah. Well, is it Deercast? Is it the Red Moon app? Is it just Lunar Calendar, which is basically the Red Moon app? But like, you know what I'm saying? Is it barometric pressure? Is it what your cell cameras are saying? Is it what your buddies are telling you?
Yeah.
Is it what you're seeing?
Yeah.
You know, is it trying to balance going out hunting, working, and making your wife happy?
Yeah.
You guys have any kids?
We have 2 kids. Yeah.
Oh, okay, there you go. So then there you go. So yeah, you're really in the middle of it.
And that's like part of it is like they're older. Well, not older, but they're 4 and 8, so they're like not babies anymore.
Yeah.
So I feel like now is like a good time to be able to get into it. They're both girls, but my 8-year-old is like when I go on like scouting, she's always like, she has a pair of binoculars in the back seat. So like I'm gonna try to get her out a couple times with me too and make it just get her outside. And
that's
so
cool.
try to incorporate the family a little bit if I can.
October's a great time to do that because it's not so cold yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you're not like scaring all the deer away when you're trying to hunt in the middle of the rut too.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, that's a hard thing. I try to take Jet sometimes in the rut, but it's a balancing act with the cold.
Yeah.
Because eventually it bites them, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's where maybe hunting out of a blind or, you know what I mean? Like just pack a blanket, something they can wrap up in, or a sleeping bag. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I do that a lot. I'll bring a sleeping bag for Jet and let him crawl inside that.
Yeah.
You know, or the other trick I do with kids that you can try is dress lighter than you normally would. So if you're cold, they're definitely cold. Because I've done that. I went out there with all my gear on and I thought, oh man, I'm doing great. And Jet's like, Dad, my feet are cold. I'm like, what? And then it hit me. I'm like, dang, dude, like I've got these really nice boots and he's got like Walmart specials. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're just little kids' boots are not the best boots ever.
Sure.
I don't care which brand you buy.
Right.
And so that's what I've started to do is I dress lighter. And then if I'm cold, then he's probably cold.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but yeah, that's awesome that you'll have the time to go, because that's the thing. Like, and we've talked about that a lot before. You know, sometimes it just comes down to opportunity,
right? And
the more time you can spend in the woods, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah,
you know. And sometimes, like I talk about my brother-in-law a lot. Him and I are kind of on the opposite ends of the spectrum. I try to spend as much time as I possibly can out there, which is always a juggling act. He doesn't do that. He doesn't spend near as much time. He just goes at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, I spend a lot of time just kind of nature watching. Do a lot of turkey hunting where we just do a lot of nature watching. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so, but I still like to be out there. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's just that scratch that I can never get done itching. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I just want to go. I want to go. And so that's what's so fun about it too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of it is like I bought my bow in December, and so it's been like 5 months now, and I'm just like, I just want to go. Yeah, you know, it's like you can only shoot your bow so much, and you can only scout so much before you're just like, I just want it to be here, and I just want to experience it and just go. Like that's the part I'm most excited about. Like, just get out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely. No, that'll be super fun.
Yeah.
Do you are you like an adrenaline junkie? Do you have have you ever felt that like when your adrenaline gets going?
I have.
Do you think that you'll be that way?
I don't know. I haven't experienced like I hunted when I was a kid, but I was like thrown in the corner stand that no deer ever walked past. So I never I hunted for like 5 years as a kid, but it was like never saw a deer, never shot a deer, or any harvested a deer or anything like that. So never really felt that. When I did see deer, it was like on a deer drive and they were running and you didn't really have time to like see them like coming into you or anything like that.
It's just
so
funny. The reason I say that is because like the reasons that you love to hunt thus far are the reasons that I like to hunt. But there's a really big part of the reason I like to hunt that you haven't experienced that yet. And it's the part when the deer gets close to you and that adrenaline just shoots into your veins and you're like, oh yeah, here we go, baby. You know what I mean? That's my favorite part. That's why I keep doing it so much. Yeah. And you haven't got to that part yet. No, it'd be interesting to see because some people like don't feel that. Like my wife, she doesn't get that. She doesn't get like the adrenaline. Like,
does that hurt you when you're like because you're so worked up and you have to like really like calm yourself down like with the bow to like
that's what people call buck fever. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be really careful. I mean, and that's the reason I'm not trying to say that to like scare you or anything like that, but just it's something to kind of be cognizant of.
Sure.
Because you can get out there and if you don't know that happens, and all of a sudden you're like, you pick up your bow and like, why is my hand shaking? Like, I can't get my hand to stop shaking. Like I'm trying to draw my bow, but I can't draw my bow. You know what I mean? That can happen to people. Like I tell you what, when I guided, another conversation I was like, hey man, like how much experience do you have? Like what happens when you get in that moment? Like, dude, I had a guy one time when like buck fever or when he saw an animal and when he knew he was going to shoot something, he would puke. He would puke. He would dry heave. Yeah. And he told me, he's like, yeah, man. So like, I have this thing where like, when I get excited, he's like, I like dry heave. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man. Like, he's like, I can't help it. So I hunted with him multiple times. Well, he would carry Gatorade with him. So he constantly drinking Gatorade. So that way, if he puked, it didn't taste so terrible. You know what I mean? But I'm telling you, dude, like I was with him one time, we were crawling up a 2-track road and there was this awesome bull that we were trying to get at. And he was we're crawling and he's like dry heaving. I mean, he would just dry heave. So everybody handles it differently. You know what I'm saying? Some people, they don't, like my wife doesn't feel a thing. That doesn't excite her. You know what I mean? Right, she's like, I don't know, you know? And so I would think you're probably the type of guy that's going to be like, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's the way I am.
I get it really bad.
Oh, dude. Okay, you've got to put the clip in. You got to put it in on this video right now. Right now. So last year, Nick filmed me a ton, you know what I mean? But there was a couple days where it's like, hey, you go, like you said, like whatever. And we went to this one spot.
Yeah.
That it's like, okay, you hunt today. And so we switched. Well, this buck what number was number 9.
Well, no, actually, we both had our bows, remember?
Oh yeah, that was even you want to see this guy come unglued. You should see us with two tree stands, 2 bows, and all the camera equipment and the camera arm. This guy was a hot mess. Oh my gosh.
Was he like, can I shoot it? Can I shoot it? Can I shoot it? Like,
that's to a T.
Oh yeah. It
Really?
was 100% like this buck walked out and it was a buck that I didn't want to shoot. So he was like, you know, can I shoot it? Can I shoot it? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I was just like, it's fine. Well, dude, the minute that his brain told his body, hey, you may shoot this deer right now. Oh my goodness. You would have thought that, I mean, dude, you came unglued.
It was really bad.
Oh my goodness. I thought he was going to fall out of the tree stand. I mean, he sounded like he was hyperventilating.
Dude, it was just so awesome. Well, because we had I don't know, 1.5-year-old or 2.5-year-old. He's a double main beam. Comes in, hits the scrape, just
perfect,
right at like 30 yards.
There's no way that the next deer is not going to come down and do the exact same thing.
So this buck, he walks right under us, kind of goes away. Not like 2 minutes later, I look up, and instantly, as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's number 9 right there. I'm like, oh, that's 9. That's 9. I'm like, can I shoot? And so we do the whole swap.
He hands me the camera, and I kind of put it on my knee, and then had in such a way that he could just kind of shoot past me, you know what I mean? And I could hold the camera here and he would be like this.
Yeah, so I grabbed my bow, and it was
the minute the bow went off the hook, oh my goodness. It was
terrible.
like,
it was so bad.
I was like, it was funny because I could tell that he either wasn't really enjoying filming that much or he just didn't get that feeling because you were never that way at the camera. But it was like the minute that hand touched the bow, it was just like that dump, which everybody experienced. I experienced it too.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason it dumped so hard that day, it's because it's like you go in and you're like, I got my bow here, but
it's not going to happen.
I'm here to film, but then all of a sudden, within literally seconds, it went from filming to, oh my gosh, you're about to shoot the biggest buck here by buck. It's like,
no, it's just shot the biggest black and buck.
it's
a declaration. It's Pirates of the Caribbean.
But no, it went so fast from being just there filming and doing what I do every single day to, holy crap, like there's a chance that you could shoot the biggest buck of your life. Like now, like it was just a very quick emotion change kind of.
Yeah. So it is an adjustment.
Yeah.
You know, so prepare for that.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
No, that'll be good. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear how that whole program works out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I'm excited.
You know what? Because there is a lot of things that's interesting that the DNR is doing that because, you know, I've said this on the podcast before. I think there is a generation of hunters right now that just doesn't know how to set tree stands.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You know, like we've even talked about doing a video of just like, hey guys,
video or something.
I mean this. Maybe this sounds stupid, and if you're rolling your eyes right now, let's just go ahead and scroll on. But I think a lot of guys don't entirely know like what to look for in a tree, like where to set it or how to set it or how do you use I have a utility safety harness that I use. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like how do you set a tree stand safely? Like where do I put the lifeline? Like things like that. You know what I'm saying? Well, not only that, but again, shooting the deer is only half the deal.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got to field dress it. How do I do that? You know what I mean? Now I've got to drag it out of here. How do I do that? Where am I going to take it? You know, so there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is. I think it's awesome that you're doing that because it is a responsibility, right?
Right.
There is a part that comes with it. I think sometimes it's just like, it's not all about just the killing. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? It's called hunting, not just killing.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that's cool that you're doing that.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see how that all goes.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, Andrew, I really, really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seriously, dude. It was this is kind of a fun thing. Like I said, I think the idea when this whole podcast at Ozonics even became an idea was just an opportunity for us to show people who we are. You know what I mean? Like I know for me, when I started Ozonics a long time ago, Scott Elrod, the owner of Ozonics, always talked about that we were here to try to build relationships with people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I know that may sound kind of cheesy, but I really bought into that. You know, for me as a consumer myself and just as a hunter, you know, I used to drive an hour and 45 minutes to a bow shop because I liked the guys that worked at the shop.
Yeah.
You know, and I felt like they really cared and they wanted to help me get the right stuff and they weren't just trying to, you know, con me into buying something extra. And I felt like when I left there, I felt confident in the gear that I was using. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I feel like we try to bring that into what we do at Ozonics, you know? And so I think that's really where the podcast kind of originated out of. It's like, you know what? Like, let's just have a conversation. Let's show people who we are and let's just talk about Ozonics, hunting, and everything in between.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and whatever that ends up being, you know? And so I think it's just really kind of cool that, like, and I think too, the thing to say is, I think it's pretty awesome. We were talking about this earlier too, that you're so willing to just be so transparent about your kind of journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think that in this day and age, that is kind of a lost art. I feel like I'm a lot that way. Like if I don't know, I'll just walk up and ask somebody, hey man, talk to me about sheep hunting. Talk to me about long range rifles. Like, hey, can you help me with this? Like, you know, like all sorts of different stuff. Like I like to be that way, but I think that that's kind of lost.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was really, really commendable how you just walked right up at the Iowa Deer Classic, like walked in the booth and just started talking.
Well, I think for me, like like you said, you guys are relatable. You're not, you even mentioned earlier, you're shooting, you want to shoot a lot of deer. You're not just like out here trying to shoot, like obviously you want to put big deer on your wall, but you're not holding out for one specific deer and like grooming the the landscape and like doing all the like you're just a normal guy that's hunting that wants to share that has a lot of experience and you're
trying to juggle it.
Right. And I think for me like that was when I found the podcast it was so relatable to like being a new hunter, and you guys were just so down to earth and so real that it made it easier to come up to you at the Iowa Deer Classic and talk to you.
Yeah.
And like today, like
look at
the conversation
face.
today
Look
for
at
me
this
is
face.
easy because I feel like I know both of you through the podcast. like just because there's been what 53 episodes or whatever.
Yeah.
Like so like that's an hour at a time of me like understanding who you guys are. So it's been fun to be able to like get to know you like more on a personal level and share my experience. But like. Nick had the diabetes episode. I was diagnosed with diabetes in October, so like that.
Really?
That episode like really like resonated with me of someone that like is now like battling some of this, knowing there's other people out there going through it. Like I was scouting one day, and my blood sugar like crazy dropped, and I'm a mile from my car, and my blood sugar is at like 60.
Yeah, it's
and
scary.
I'm like. This has never happened to me before. I would have never even realized it before. Like you had kind of talked about like the way, like with the e-bike and just all of that stuff.
Yeah,
and so I think just like you guys being open with who you are and what your purpose is, like as a viewer, it's made it really enjoyable to get to know you guys like through the podcast. And now like for me, it's enjoyable to be here and thank you guys for all the content you're putting out and stuff too.
So
and,
awesome.
And just
I really appreciate that.
like being real with people and not like. Talking about the realistic side of hunting, not just the like, oh, I shot these 580 inches the last 5 years because because I have this food plot and like and that stuff's really cool and like it's there's a part of me that's like, oh wait, man, I want to do that someday, but also like I feel like being realistic with my expectations and what I'm actually going to experience as a hunter. You guys have done a really good job of just like showcasing that. And so thank you all for just everything too.
That means a lot, man.
High five.
That's really awesome. That's really cool to hear you say that. I really appreciate
Mission
that.
accomplished, baby. Mission accomplished.
That's so awesome. That's sweet. That's really cool.
Yeah.
No, that's really cool, man. I appreciate you saying all that stuff.
Yeah.
No, and that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of been our goal from the start, I feel like.
Yep.
And if we can, I mean, me and you have kind of talked about this, but if we can just help one person, help 10 people, that's exactly it.
And we've talked about this before. There's a, Barstool Sports, right? Everybody knows what Barstool Sports is. I saw a video about Dave Portnoy a long time ago, and it talked about how he was in this meeting, and I'm kind of probably going to butcher the story, but basically he was in a meeting, and there was this consulting company like, oh man, we can help you grow in all this way, and he had all these ideas, and he was just like super not having it. And he said in that meeting, he said, here's the deal. He goes, we're going to make content for 10 people. Because if we can make content that we are proud of and that 10 people will watch and find entertaining or get some enjoyment out of, then we can do it for 100 people. Then we can do it for 1,000 people, and it can grow. And I think when everything that we do, I think that's what him and I do a lot of back and forth about. It's like, what do we talk about? It's like, well, I mean this with all due respect, like to you as a guy that listens and anybody else that's listening, mom and dad, Nick's mom and dad. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't really care what anybody thinks.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't.
Yeah.
And I bear that shield. It's not a good thing all the time.
Yeah.
Ask my wife, but I just don't care.
Right.
But I do like the idea of just trying to make content for 10 people. But at the end of the day, I just want to make content that we're really proud of.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of comes across, not in an arrogant way or like a disrespectful way, but it's just like, this is just who we are.
Yeah.
And I think we most of all try to do the best job we can to represent Ozonics in the right way.
Oh, without a
because it's
doubt.
not the Cole and Nick podcast, right? It's Ozonics podcast. So, you know what I mean? Like we hope to try to kind of stay within some lines,
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, I want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings every once in a while, but and he wants to talk about the Packers, but we'll stay into the hunting stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think we just try to. That's what it's about for us.
Mm-hmm.
It's just being who we are, and just being who we are as people, but also at Ozonics. You know what I mean? And trying to showcase what it does, and hopefully, help somebody.
Yeah.
Like this guy.
It does.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to give you a little pass for shooting Hoyt, but it's okay. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
especially being from Wisconsin. Wow, you really turned on
I
the
didn't
brand.
do enough research apparently.
Oh no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
They're all really good.
They're all good, man. I'm just razzing
No, I
you,
know.
dude.
No, I know.
It doesn't matter if it's Hoyt, if it's Matthews, if it's Prime,
Elite.
if it's Elite, if it's
They all do the same
geez,
thing.
I don't know. There's so many of them great ones out there. I mean,
Yeah.
you could shoot whatever it might be. Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up. Podcast 53 in the books. Andrew, I really appreciate you being here, man. Seriously,
Absolutely.
it's cool to get to know you.
Yep.
Episode over. Stay classy.
See you next week.
Well, as always, Killerwinds Podcast in the book, episode 53 done.